Story number 1. It was a moonless night when my friend, Mark, and I decided to venture into the deep, dense forest. Our flashlights pierced the inky blackness as we ventured further from the safety of the city's glow. The whispers of ancient trees filled the air, and ominous shadows danced among the foliage. "We're in the heart of darkness now," Mark said with a nervous chuckle, attempting to mask his unease. We pressed on, the crunch of fallen leaves beneath our boots the only sound in the eerily quiet woods. Our quest was simple: to explore, to feel the thrill of the unknown, and to challenge our fear of the dark. As we trekked deeper into the forest, our flashlights revealed gnarled branches and tangled roots that seemed to reach out for us, as if the very forest was trying to keep us at bay. But we were young and fearless, or so we thought. An unnatural silence settled around us, and a chill ran down my spine. We exchanged nervous glances, but neither of us wanted to be the first to suggest turning back. That's when we stumbled upon it, a massive pit concealed by leaves and underbrush, a gaping maw in the earth. Our flashlights played over the jagged edge, revealing a tunnel that descended into darkness. "Whoa, check this out," Mark said, his voice trembling with excitement. With youthful curiosity, we peered into the abyss, unaware of the nightmare that awaited. As we descended, the tunnel twisted and turned, its walls closing in on us. Panic began to gnaw at the edges of my mind, but I pushed it aside, unwilling to let fear overtake me. Suddenly, the tunnel opened into a vast, underground chamber. Our flashlights revealed a nightmarish sight, a monstrous creature with the body of a tiger but grotesquely enlarged, its enormous claws gleaming in the feeble light. Its gaping maw was filled with rows of razor-sharp teeth that promised a gruesome end. Paralyzed by terror, we watched as the creature turned its malevolent gaze upon us. The forest, it seemed, had lured us into a trap, and now we were the prey. Mark and I scrambled in opposite directions, our screams echoing through the cavernous chamber. I could hear Mark's cries for help as I ran, but the terrible sounds that followed him were too gruesome to contemplate. I couldn't go back. I had to escape this nightmare. As I sprinted through the twisting tunnels, I could feel the creature's presence behind me, its hot breath on my neck. My heart pounded like a drum, and my lungs burned with every labored breath. I knew I couldn't outrun it forever. Finally, I burst out of the underground chamber and into the night air. I could still hear the creature's enraged roars echoing behind me, but it seemed reluctant to leave the dark depths of the forest. I didn't stop running until I reached the safety of the city's lights. Mark was gone, lost to the forest's malevolent trap. I was the only one to emerge from that nightmarish ordeal, forever haunted by the memory of the tiger-like monster that lurked in the heart of the forest, a warning that some mysteries should remain unsolved and some fears left unchallenged.
Story number 2. The Isolated Feast. It was a stormy night, the kind of rain that makes you grateful for shelter. As I drove through winding, rain-soaked roads, I noticed a dimly lit sign at the roadside, The Isolated Feast. Curiosity got the better of me, and I pulled into the gravel lot. A solitary restaurant in the middle of nowhere seemed like the perfect place to escape the storm. Inside, the restaurant was a stark contrast to the inclement weather outside. Dimly lit, with an old-world charm, it exuded a strange allure. The place was eerily empty, with only a single occupied table in the far corner. A waitress, her demeanor strangely robotic, led me to a table by the window. Her eyes never met mine, and her words felt rehearsed, as if spoken 1,000 times before. She placed a menu before me, its pages filled with exotic dishes I couldn't pronounce. As I perused the menu, I couldn't help but feel an odd sensation, like I was being watched. I dismissed it as paranoia and ordered the daily special, feeling a strange compulsion to try something new. Minutes passed, and I noticed the lone diner at the other table hadn't touched his food. He sat there, staring into the distance, his face pallid and expressionless. The waitress returned with my meal, and I couldn't help but ask about the other guest. "Oh, don't mind him," she said with a chilling smile that sent shivers down my spine. "He's just waiting for his meal." My unease grew as I took my first bite. The food was exquisite, but a nagging suspicion tugged at me. I glanced around and realized the eerie silence in the restaurant, the complete absence of background chatter or clinking of utensils. The waitress returned to refill my water, and I couldn't resist asking about the strange atmosphere. She replied in a monotone, "We prefer to offer our guests a tranquil dining experience." I finished my meal, and as I pushed my plate aside, a wave of drowsiness washed over me. The room began to spin, and I struggled to stay conscious. The last thing I saw before darkness claimed me was the waitress's cold smile. When I awoke, I found myself in a dimly lit room, tied to a chair. Panic surged as I realized my situation. The lone diner from the restaurant sat across from me, his expression still vacant. The waitress, now accompanied by a sinister chef, entered the room. She explained that the Isolated Feast was no ordinary restaurant. They didn't just serve food, they served their guests. I was to be the main course. They approached me with gleaming knives, and the diner at the other table finally spoke, his voice devoid of emotion. "It's your turn now." I struggled against my restraints, but it was futile. The chef's smile widened as he raised his knife, and I closed my eyes, bracing for the inevitable. Suddenly, a commotion outside the room startled them. Shouts and the sound of a scuffle echoed through the restaurant. The door burst open, and a group of police officers stormed in, guns drawn. Chaos erupted as the officers apprehended the waitress and the chef. I was freed from my restraints, my heart still racing from the ordeal. It turned out that a tip from an anonymous diner had alerted the authorities to the restaurant's sinister practices. As I was led outside, I couldn't help but glance back at the isolated feast, its charm now replaced by an air of malevolence. The lone diner, his expressionless face, watched me with hollow eyes. The restaurant was shut down and its dark secrets exposed. I was one of the fortunate few to escape the isolated feast, a nightmarish place where the line between hospitality and horror was terrifyingly thin. It was a lesson learned that sometimes, even the most inviting places can harbor the darkest of intentions.
Story number 3. The Cave's Nightmare. Jake and I had always been fascinated by the unknown, driven by a shared love for adventure. So, when we heard rumors of an unexplored cave deep in the forest, we couldn't resist the urge to uncover its secrets. The hike to the cave entrance was arduous, the forest dense and untamed. The atmosphere grew heavier as we ventured deeper into the woods, and the sunlight waned as ominous clouds gathered overhead. Finally, we stumbled upon the cave entrance, a foreboding chasm that seemed to swallow the very light around it. Armed with headlamps, ropes, and a sense of exhilaration, we descended into the abyss. The cave's interior was a labyrinth of winding tunnels, its walls glistening with moisture. As we explored deeper, our voices echoed through the subterranean passages, a haunting reminder of our isolation. We ventured further than we ever intended, the passage of time becoming a blur. That's when we noticed it, a strange, guttural sound reverberating through the cave's depths. The hairs on the back of our necks stood on end as we shined our headlamps toward the source. There, lurking in the shadows, was a nightmarish figure, a gaunt, zombie-like creature with pallid skin, sunken eyes, and elongated, gnarled claws that gleamed menacingly in the dim light. Its bloodshot eyes bore into us, and a primal fear surged through our veins. "Run!" I shouted, and we turned and bolted back the way we had come. The creature emitted a horrifying screech that sent chills down our spines as it gave chase. In the darkness of the cave, panic and disorientation threatened to engulf us. The creature was relentless, its red eyes glinting with malevolence as it closed the gap between us. We reached a dead end, a small chamber with no visible exit. Desperation consumed us as the creature advanced, its grotesque form illuminated by our trembling headlamps. In a final act of desperation, we scrambled up the chamber's walls, using our ropes to hoist ourselves out of the creature's reach. It clawed at the walls, its agonized wails reverberating through the cave. Exhausted and terrified, we managed to find a concealed crevice in the cave wall, where we hid in silence, praying that the creature would lose interest and leave. Hours passed, and the cave remained eerily silent. We dared not speak for fear of attracting the creature's attention. Slowly, the minutes turned into hours, and the creature's relentless pursuit seemed to wane. As dawn's light finally filtered into the cave, we mustered the courage to venture out of our hiding place. The chamber was empty, the creature gone. We made our way back to the cave entrance, our senses on high alert, but the creature was nowhere to be seen. We ascended into the forest, our bodies battered and our spirits broken. The cave had held a terror we could never have imagined, a creature from the darkest recesses of our nightmares. We had been fortunate to escape with our lives, forever haunted by the memory of those red eyes and gnarled claws that had pursued us through the abyss. As we emerged into the sunlight, we vowed never to speak of the cave again, a dark secret buried deep within the recesses of our minds, a reminder that there are places in this world where the line between reality and nightmare blurs, and where the pursuit of adventure can lead to the very brink of terror.